Less than 48 hours before the first presidential election debate, US President Donald Trump has brushed aside allegations that he hasn't paid income tax for 10 of the last 15 years. The New York Times says it's obtained tax records for Mr. Trump and his companies for the past 2 decades. The newspaper says he reported heavy losses from many of his businesses, allowing him to offset hundreds of millions of dollars in income.
It's fake news. It's totally fake news. Made up, fake. We went through the same stories. You could have asked me the same questions 4 years ago. I had to litigate this and talk about it. Totally fake news. No, actually, I paid tax, and you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time.
Simon Marks joins us live from Washington, D.C. for more on this. Simon, as we heard President Trump saying his tax returns are still being audited. We've heard that for many years now. How damaging, though, are these claims for President Trump?
Well, there's no question it's damaging, it's humiliating, and Steve, it raises questions once again about the president's judgment, because the idea that he would not put these documents into the public domain at a time of his choosing over the last 4 years, but instead would wait for the New York Times to publish the details contained in these documents 2 days before his first presidential debate with Joe Biden is simply extraordinary. His press secretary has been on the Fox News channel here within the last few minutes, describing this as a hit job by the New York Times. Well, what it certainly isn't is fake news, as the president maintained there. The Times has obtained 20 years of Donald Trump's tax records. They're not publishing the actual documents because they believe that publication would end up revealing how they got their hands on these documents, but they say that the person that passed them to them had the legal right to possess them. And these documents paint a really devastating picture, not just of President Trump's failure to pay income tax, like the vast majority of Americans do pay every year, but they also paint a very distressing and disturbing view of the financial state of his own business empire. He has $421 million in loans that are outstanding and will all come due over the course of the next 4 years, raising substantial questions about how on earth he's going to manage that debt load if indeed he is re-elected to the presidency in November. But the documents more broadly than that raise questions about the morality and ethics of Donald Trump's business empire. This, we now know today, is a man who paid more in income tax to the governments of Panama, India and the Philippines than he paid to his own government here in the United States, than he paid to the US Treasury. And that is going to take a lot of explaining to the average working class American supporter of Donald Trump, who dutifully pays his and her federal income tax every April the 15th.
Simon, the report is certainly wide-ranging, but New York Times says that, in fact, there's more to come. I mean, what kind of reactions have we seen today?
Well, Joe Biden's already got an advertisement out. I mean, it's barely been 12 hours. I think we have 15 hours now since this report was published by the New York Times, and the first TV ad by Joe Biden capitalizing on this is already being distributed here. It is evident that the New York Times has devoted an enormous amount of time and journalistic shoe leather to gathering these documents and then analysing them. It seems apparent that there was a war room created up in New York where New York Times journalists and financial experts have been poring over these documents, possibly for many weeks. They did secure reaction from a Trump Organization lawyer who claimed that the documents were inaccurate. The New York Times, of course, disputes that claim. President Trump last night groused that the newspaper hadn't contacted him for comment, when in fact the article itself contains a comment from his lawyer. So whether the White House knew about the precise timing of this release, we don't know, but they certainly will have been aware from Donald Trump's lawyer that the New York Times had managed to get its hands on this trove of documents prior to publication. Does it change any minds on America's election campaign trail? Possibly not. 90% of voters say their minds are already made up. but it certainly creates a narrative difficulty for Donald Trump in a very important week of the campaign.
All right, Simon, thank you very much for that. Simon Marks there reporting from Washington, D.C.